I've hurt every woman I've ever loved, and I didn't understand why. I almost didn't record this. I sat down 3 times this week with this little camera, and each time I just turned it off, went and made tea, stood at the window for a while, came back, sat down again.
I'm not sure what kept stopping me. Maybe I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Maybe saying it out loud makes it final in a way that thinking it doesn't. But I'm 74 years old. My name is Gerald. Gerald Amos Whitfield, if you want the whole thing. And I've been sitting with something for about 2 years now that I think I finally understand. Not completely. I'm not sure you ever understand anything completely, but enough. Enough that it won't leave me alone until I say it somewhere. So here I am. I want to be clear about something before I go any further. I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a life coach. I'm a retired civil engineer from a small town in Ohio who has been married twice, loved at least 3 women deeply, and hurt all of them in ways I still can't fully explain. That's what this is about. Not the hurting exactly, more about the not understanding, the long, quiet gap between what I felt and what I was actually capable of doing with that feeling. How that gap, and I never even knew it was there, swallowed everything good that came near me. My first wife was named Carol. We married young. I was 23, she was 21. We were both from the same county, both Catholic, both the kind of people who thought that love was something that happened to you, like weather. You didn't cause it, you just got rained on, or you didn't. Carol was warm in a way I didn't know how to receive back then. She would reach for my hand in the car for no reason, just reach over and take it. And I remember this so clearly it almost embarrasses me. I remember thinking, why does she keep doing that? Not in a cruel way. I wasn't a cruel man. I was just confused by it, like I didn't quite know what she needed from me in those moments. Like her reaching was a question I didn't have the language to answer. So I'd let her hold my hand, but I'd also be somewhere else in my head, thinking about work, thinking about the weekend, thinking about nothing in particular. She felt it. Of course she did. We had 11 years together, Carol and I, a daughter named Renee, who is now 48 and lives in Portland. She calls on Sundays, Renee does. We have a good relationship now. We worked hard to get there. But those 11 years with Carol, they were not bad years. I want to be honest about that. There were good years inside them. There was real life in those years. There was a house we bought together, and a garden she planted every spring, and Christmases that were warm and messy and full of her family's noise. But underneath all of it, something was slowly going wrong, and neither one of us knew how to name it. She started saying things like, "I feel alone when I'm with you," and I would hear those words and genuinely not understand them. How could she feel alone? I was right there. I was in the room. I came home every night. I didn't drink. I wasn't chasing other women. I provided. I was responsible. I used to think those words were unfair. Now I think they were the most precise, honest, heartbreaking thing she ever said to me. And she said them more than once. She said them for years before she stopped saying them. When she stopped saying them, that was when I should have been afraid. Instead, I felt something like relief. She left in the spring. Renee was 9. I remember standing in the kitchen the morning after Carol told me she was going, and I was making coffee, and I was thinking, I'm ashamed to say this, I was thinking about whether I needed to call a lawyer that day or whether I could wait until Monday. That was where my mind went.
Not to, what did I do wrong? Not to, is there any way to fix this? Straight to logistics, because that was how I had always survived hard things. You move, you make a plan, you go through the motions of being a competent person, and eventually the feeling part catches up, or it doesn't. The feeling part, in this case, caught up with me about 14 years later, sitting in a different kitchen, in a different house, in a different marriage that was beginning to fall apart in almost exactly the same way. Her name was Diane. Diane came into my life when Renee was in high school. I was 41, Diane was 38. She was different from Carol in almost every surface way, louder, funnier, more impatient, more opinionated. She could argue with you about something and still be laughing halfway through the argument. I fell for her fast, faster than I expected. There was something about Diane that made me feel like I was more alive than I usually was, more present. She had a way of demanding your attention that was almost physical, and for a while, a few years really, I gave it to her. I was more open with Diane than I had been with anyone in my life. We talked. We actually talked, late at night, over bad wine. We talked about things I had never said out loud before. She made me feel like maybe the problem with Carol had just been a compatibility issue, like maybe I was capable of this after all. We married after 3 years of that, and then, slowly, almost like a tide going out, so slowly you don't notice it until the water is gone, I closed back up. I don't know exactly when it started. I've tried to find the moment, the turning point, the specific day or week when I began to drift back into myself. I can't find it. That's part of what's been haunting me. It wasn't a decision. That's what you need to understand. It wasn't a choice I made. It was more like gravity, something pulling me back to a shape I had always been, a shape I didn't even know was a shape. I thought it was just who I was. Diane would want to talk about something that mattered to her, something emotional, something beneath the surface, and I would listen. I was good at looking like I was listening, but somewhere, in the middle of it, a door would close. Not loudly, no slamming, just a quiet click, and I'd be on the other side of it. She felt it too. Of course she did. Women always feel it. That's something I understand now that I didn't understand then.
Diane and I lasted 9 years. 9 years is a long time to be slowly losing something you love without knowing that's what's happening. You fill the space with life, vacations, renovations, Renee's wedding, grandchildren arriving, busyness. The calendar becomes a kind of armor. And you tell yourself, I told myself, that this is just what long marriages are, that the heat settles, that calm is not the same as emptiness, that you can love someone and still not reach for them. But the night she told me she wanted to separate, Diane said something I have not been able to stop thinking about since. She said, "Gerald, I have been trying to get to you for years, and I don't think you even know there's a door." I sat very still when she said that. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself. Something in those words landed in a place that arguments couldn't reach. I just sat there. And she sat there looking at me with this expression that wasn't anger. That's what I remember most. There was no anger left by then. It was something sadder than anger. Sadder and quieter. Like someone looking at a road they've decided they're not going to try anymore. I've never been a man who cried easily. My father wasn't that kind of man, and I suppose I inherited the shape of him without meaning to. We didn't talk about what things felt like in the house I grew up in. We talked about what things were, facts, outcomes, what needed doing. I was the eldest of 4 boys.
My mother was a quiet woman who expressed love through feeding people and worrying about them. My father expressed it by showing up, by being steady, by not leaving. I thought for most of my life that not leaving was the same as being present. It isn't. That difference, that small, devastating difference, I think that's where the whole story lives. After Diane left, I was alone for the first time in my adult life. Renee offered to have me come stay with them in Portland. I didn't. I stayed in the house. I kept going to work for another 2 years until I retired. I ate dinner alone most nights. I watched too much television. I went to bed too early. And somewhere in that silence, not immediately, not in any dramatic way, just gradually, the way daylight changes in November, I started to hear things I had never let myself hear before. Memories, mostly. Carol reaching for my hand in the car. Diane asking me, "What are you thinking right now?" And me saying nothing because it was easier than trying to locate what was actually in there. My daughter, Renee, at about 13, asking me if I was proud of her, some school thing, some performance or recital. I can't even remember what it was now. And me saying, "Of course," and patting her shoulder. Of course. What a cold answer. What a closed, efficient, armored little answer. I thought I was being reassuring. I thought I was giving her what she needed. She needed me to stop, to look at her, to let what she'd done matter to me visibly, where she could see it. I didn't know that, or I knew it somewhere I couldn't reach. About 2 years ago, I was at a doctor's appointment. Nothing dramatic, annual checkup. And my doctor, a young woman, Dr. Patel, very thorough, she asked me how I was doing. Not medically, just how I was doing. And I said, "Fine." And she looked at me the way doctors sometimes do when they're not quite done with a question. And she said, "Are you sure? You seem like you have something on your mind." I almost said "I'm fine" again. The word was already formed. Instead, I heard myself say, "I think I've spent most of my life not knowing how to be close to people." Just like that, to a stranger, a young doctor with a clipboard. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "That's a hard thing to realize." Yes, it is. It's a very hard thing to realize when the people you could have been close to are either gone or living their lives without you or standing at a careful, polite distance that you created and maintained for decades without understanding that's what you were doing. I've thought a lot about why. Not in a blaming way. I'm past the age where blame feels useful, but in a trying to understanding way. I think I learned early that emotions were weight, that feeling things too much made you slow, vulnerable, hard to depend on. My father never said this. No one sat me down and taught it to me, but it was in the air I grew up breathing. Strong meant contained. Reliable meant you didn't ask for things. Love meant you stayed and you provided and you showed up, and whatever was happening inside you, you managed quietly on your own. I was very good at managing quietly on my own. I was so good that the people who loved me couldn't find me. I was in there, I want to say that. I was in there feeling things, missing people, wanting connection, loving Carol, loving Diane, loving Renee in ways that felt enormous inside me. There were moments, driving home late, watching my daughter sleep when she was small, sitting across from Diane at a restaurant early in our marriage, moments where I felt so much it almost frightened me. And then the door would close, and I would be competent again, and no one could see what had just been there.
I want to tell you about one specific night. Renee was maybe 7. Carol and I were still married. It was winter, I remember that. Cold outside, windows fogged. Renee had had some kind of bad dream and called out, and Carol went to her, and I lay in bed listening to the sound of Carol talking to her down the hall.
I couldn't hear the words, just the tone, that low, unhurried, "I've got you" tone. And I lay there in the dark thinking, she's so good at that. Carol is so good at that. And then, this is the part I remember, I thought, I don't know how to do that. And then, almost immediately, that's okay, that's her thing, she's got it. And I went back to sleep. What I didn't think was, I want to learn how to do that. What I didn't think was, what is stopping me from going down that hall? What I didn't do was ask myself why comfort felt like something that belonged to other people, something I was meant to receive when necessary, but not to give. I just assigned it to her and went to sleep. She was doing it all. She was being warm for both of us, and I was letting her. And neither one of us understood yet what that arrangement was going to cost. Renee told me something 3 years ago that I think about often. She said that growing up, she always felt like she had to earn my attention, that I was present in the house, but somehow far away, and getting through to me felt like a project she could never quite finish. She wasn't saying it cruelly. Renee is not a cruel person. She was saying it the way adults say hard things to their parents when they've done enough of their own work to say it calmly. I listened. I did not defend. I had earned that conversation by then, I think. By then, I had enough understanding to just let it land. It landed. I said, I know. I'm sorry. And then I said, and this surprised even me, I said, I didn't know I was doing it. I want you to know I didn't know. And she said, I know, Dad. That's the hard part. That is the hard part. The things we do that cost the people we love the most, so many of them aren't cruelties. They're absences. They're the texture of someone who never learned to come all the way into a room. I'm not sure when I stopped waiting for it to get easier. For a long time after Diane, I thought I might meet someone, that I would be different now, that I understood something, that understanding was the same as changing. I did meet someone, briefly, a woman named Patricia, who I knew through church. We went to dinner a handful of times. She was kind and funny and had interesting things to say. And one evening she said, Gerald, you're very good company, but I can't tell what you're feeling ever. I sat with that. I said, I'm working on it. She smiled, a good, patient, slightly sad smile. I know, she said. I can tell you're trying. It didn't become more than what it was. I don't think I was ready. I'm still not sure I'm ready. I'm 74 years old, and I'm not entirely sure I know how to let someone in, even now. I'm better, I think. I understand the door now. I know it closes. I can sometimes stop it. But you can understand a thing and still be shaped by it. What I wish, and this is the closest I'll come to a conclusion, because I don't have a conclusion, not really. What I wish is that someone had told me early on that love is not just a feeling you carry around. It's a practice, an active thing, a daily, small, imperfect choosing to come toward someone instead of going quiet. I thought love was the feeling. I had the feeling. I was full of the feeling. I just didn't know that the other person needed to be able to see it, touch it, that it needed to be expressed to be real to them, that you could love someone enormously in the privacy of your own chest, and they could be standing next to you, feeling alone. I know this sounds simple. Maybe it is simple. Most things that cost us everything turn out to be simple when we finally see them. My health is all right, nothing catastrophic. I want to be honest about that, too. I'm not recording this from a deathbed. I'm recording it from a kitchen table in Ohio with a cup of coffee that's gone cold. But I'm 74. And I'm aware, the way you become aware at this age, that time is a different thing than it used to be. The far end of it is visible now in a way it wasn't at 40, 50, even at 60. And there's something about being able to see the end of something that makes you want to say the things you kept putting off, This is one of them. I failed in love not because I didn't love. I failed because I didn't know that love required me to keep showing up inside it, not just next to it, inside it, visible, warm, reachable. I kept the door closed, and the people who loved me knocked for years. Some of them knocked gently, some of them knocked until their hands hurt. Some of them eventually just walked away, which was the only reasonable thing to do. And I was on the other side of the door the whole time, wondering why I felt alone. Carl is still alive, I think. I've lost track. We haven't spoken in many years. Diane remarried. I heard that from Renee. I hope she's happy. I genuinely hope that. Renee comes to visit at Christmas now, brings the grandchildren. There's more warmth between us than there used to be. I'm grateful for that every day. I do not take it for granted. The coffee is cold. The room is quiet. I think that's everything I wanted to say. If anything in this found you somewhere quiet, somewhere you weren't expecting, you don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to comment or share or think about it even.
But if it brought something up, a door of your own maybe, I'd be glad to hear it. Not to respond with wisdom. I don't have wisdom. Just to know you were here. That's enough. That's always been enough. I just took too long to understand it.